10 Brazilian engineers, Ford's best in Latin America, tried to fix a millionaire's truck, but none of them could. But when a young Mexican mechanic with an old backpack and grease-covered hands asked permission to check it out, everyone laughed at her. "You, a small-town girl, this isn't like changing the oil in a Tsuru," one of them yelled at her while hundreds of people recorded her humiliation. What no one imagined was that in less than 15 minutes, that girl would silence the entire pavilion and bring a millionaire to his knees in front of her. Subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching this story from. Alessandra wakes up that Tuesday in February at 4:30 in the morning. Outside, the city still sleeps in the cold darkness that makes your bones shiver. She moves silently through the two-bedroom apartment where she lives with her family, trying not to wake her three younger brothers who sleep huddled together in a single room. The youngest, Tonito, just 9 years old, hugs a worn pillow while dreaming of who knows what beautiful things. Alexandra looks at him with infinite tenderness, with the protective love of an older sister who has had to be almost a mother. In the living room turned bedroom, her father, Genaro, snores softly. This 51-year-old man, who was once a factory supervisor, who once walked with his head held high, now spends his days slumped in a worn-out armchair watching television, defeated by 6 years of unemployment that have stripped him of his dignity piece by piece. Alondra feels that familiar pain in her chest, that mixture of love and frustration that only someone who has seen their father break down can understand. Her mother, Ophelia, is already awake in the tiny kitchen, making weak coffee and a couple of folded tortillas with beans. This 48-year-old woman, her hands rough from cleaning other people's houses 6 days a week for 4,500 pesos a month, smiles when she sees her eldest daughter. "Are you leaving already, my dear?" she asks in a soft voice. Alessandra nods as she ties her hair back in a practical ponytail. Her hands have obvious calluses and small scars from welding burns, the physical marks of 6 years working with hot metal and heavy tools. "Mom, today is the day of the exhibition," Alessandra says with a mixture of excitement and nerves that tighten her stomach. "Maybe, just maybe, I can make some important contacts." Ophelia touches her cheek with maternal tenderness. "Be careful in the truck, sweetie, and don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Alexandra hugs her mother, breathing in that familiar smell of cheap soap and dignified exhaustion, and thinks something she doesn't dare say out loud. That ticket to the Transport and Heavy Cargo Expo cost her 2,800 pesos, which took her a whole year to save up, putting away 50 pesos here, 100 there, skipping meals and denying herself any personal pleasures. As she walks through the still dark streets of her neighborhood, heading for the bus terminal, carrying her worn backpack containing her basic tools and a technical manual, she translated herself from English using free apps. Alexandra remembers how it all began. She was just 16 when her world changed violently. Her father had just lost his job at the factory where he had worked for 23 years, a victim of massive staff cuts. The financial desperation was so brutal that Genaro, with his last severance pay savings, bought 2 old Ford F-250 trucks to start a small construction materials transport business. It was his last attempt to keep his family afloat, but the trucks were old and problematic, and the costs of professional mechanics devoured the meager profits. Alessandra saw her father cry for the first time in her life when he couldn't pay for an 8,500 peso repair, and the business was on the verge of collapse. That night, the 16-year-old girl made a decision that would change everything. She would learn how to repair those damn trucks, with no money for courses, no mentor, nothing but free internet in a public square, and ironclad determination. Alessandra immersed herself in YouTube videos, international technical forums, and digital manuals that she translated word by word with infinite patience. The first few months were a hell of failures. She burned herself with welding, hit her fingers with wrenches, cried in frustration when something that had taken her hours to repair failed again. But little by little, with each problem solved, with each system mastered, Alessandra developed something extraordinary: the ability to diagnose complex faults in hydraulic systems and suspensions just by observing patterns of behavior, pressure, and leaks. For 6 years, she kept those 2 impossible trucks running against all odds, developing creative techniques born of pure necessity. The bus that takes her to Mexico City takes 3.5 hours. Alessandra sits glued to the window, watching the sun illuminate the Mexican landscape as she mentally reviews everything she knows about heavy vehicle suspension systems. She works as an assistant mechanic in a neighborhood workshop for $9,500 a month. All that money goes to supporting her family. There are no luxuries, no outings, nothing for her, just work, responsibility, and the stubborn hope that maybe someday things will get better. Meanwhile, on that same Tuesday, but in a completely different world, Armando Delgado wakes up in his Polanco penthouse with a panoramic view of the city. The 47-year-old owner of Delgado Construcciones, Mexico's third largest heavy construction group, gets out of a king-size bed where he has slept alone for the past 3 years. The side where his wife Estela used to sleep remains untouched, the pillows perfectly arranged, as if she were going to return at any moment. Armando looks in the mirror while shaving and sees a successful man who feels deeply empty. He has money, power, and respect in the industry, but he is alone in a way that hurts to the bone. His two adult children live in the United States and barely answer his calls. After Estela's death from the aggressive cancer that took her in 4 months, Armando took refuge in his work until he became cold and cynical, surrounded by employees who fear him more than they respect him. As he prepares his coffee in an expensive Italian machine, he thinks bitterly about the problem that has been driving him crazy for 5 weeks. His black 2024 Ford F450 Super Duty Limited. That 3-ton beast, right, worth 2 million pesos and equipped with an adaptive active suspension system, has a fault that no one can fix. The rear suspension randomly collapses under load, making it impossible to transport the materials for his million-dollar projects. He has already lost 3 important contracts due to delays. It's unbelievable, Armando thinks with frustration as he drinks his bitter coffee. I spent $800,000 bringing in 10 specialized Brazilian mechanics, the best in Ford systems in Latin America, and none of those useless people could solve the problem. The truck is now on display at a Transport and Heavy Cargo Expo at Vol TC, where Armando publicly offered a prize of 600,000 euros to anyone who can fix the fault. It's a fortune, but he doesn't care about the money anymore. He just wants someone, anyone, to fix that damn vehicle. His director of operations, Leandro Vega, calls him early. Don Armando, good morning. I'm already at the expo. The last 2 Brazilian mechanics are going to try today, but honestly, I've lost hope. Armando sighs wearily. Leandro is his distant nephew. He hired him 3 years ago more out of family pressure than actual ability. And lately, Armando suspects that the guy is more talk than action. When Alessandra finally arrives at the World Trade Center after 9 a.m., her eyes widen at the magnitude of the event. Thousands of people, hundreds of shiny commercial vehicles, gigantic stands of international brands. She feels tiny, out of place, in her simple clothes and worn backpack among so many elegant people in suits and corporate badges. She follows the murmur of a huge crowd to the main pavilion, and there she sees that Ford F450, imposing black, surrounded by at least 400 people. Alexandra makes her way through the crowd and hears fragments of conversations. 5 weeks without a solution, 10 Brazilian mechanics failed. 600,000 prize. Her heart starts to beat faster. On a raised platform, Leandro Vega is speaking into a microphone with an air of smugness, while 2 of the Brazilian mechanics make their last failed attempt. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this problem has defeated the best specialists in Brazil. It is a high-level technical mystery. Alexandra observes the truck with that analytical gaze she developed over 6 years of necessity. Something about the pattern of the suspension collapse seems familiar, very familiar. Without thinking twice, without calculating the consequences, she steps forward and says in a clear but timid voice, "Excuse me, sir, could I examine the truck?" The silence that follows is immediate and heavy. Leandro Vega looks down at her and for a second seems not to process what he has just heard. Then he lets out a loud, cruel, theatrical laugh that chills Alessandra's blood. "I can't believe it, I can't believe it," Leandro shouts into the microphone, his amplified voice echoing throughout the pavilion. "Now the small-town girls think they know more than Brazilian engineers. By Ford." The crowd burst into laughter. Alexandra feels as if someone has thrown ice-cold water on her. Her cheeks burn with shame as hundreds of eyes judge her, measure her, find her ridiculous. And there, sitting in the VIP area, with a privileged view of the whole spectacle, Armando Delgado watches the scene while drinking his third coffee of the day, his expression showing total disinterest and absolute skepticism towards that humble girl who dared to think she could achieve something that 10 international experts could not. But what none of them know yet is that in exactly 28 minutes, that small-town girl is going to change everything forever. Leandro Vega's laughter still echoes throughout the pavilion when the 10 Brazilian mechanics approach to see what is causing so much laughter. When they see Alessandra standing there with her worn backpack and simple clothes, the reaction is instant and brutal. "Oh my God," shouts one of them, a burly man in his mid-40s wearing a t-shirt that says Especialista for Curitiba, mixing Portuguese with Spanish. "The little Mexican girl is going to solve what we couldn't. This is a joke, a prank." Another taller mechanic with a gray beard approaches Alessandra with a condescending smile that turns her stomach. "Beautiful, listen to me carefully," he says in a paternalistic and cruel tone. "We are certified engineers with 20 to 30 years of experience in Ford systems. We came from Brazil especially for this. Do you understand what that means? This isn't changing the oil in an old Tsuru, young lady." The words hit Alessandra like physical punches, but she keeps her chin up. She can feel the tears wanting to come out, but she refuses to give them that satisfaction. "Sir," she says, her voice trembling just a little, "I know what I see. Please just let me check." Let her check. Leandro shouts into the microphone, turning the situation into a full-blown spectacle. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to get good. We have free entertainment." The crowd now numbers over 600 people. Several well-known automotive influencers start live broadcasts on Instagram and TikTok. A YouTube channel called Fieros y Motores with 150,000 followers titles its live broadcast Girl from Puebla versus 10 Brazilian experts. Guaranteed failure. The comments start pouring in. This is going to be epic. Ha ha ha. Poor girl, she doesn't know what she's gotten herself into. Old women trying to do men's work. I can't wait to see her cry. Leandro steps down from the platform and stands in front of Alessandra with his arms crossed, using his height to intimidate her. "Okay, girl, I'll give you a chance to train," he says with venom in every word. "But on my terms. Do you hear me? My terms." Alessandra nods slowly. Her heart is beating so hard she feels like everyone can hear it. "Number one," says Leandro, raising one finger. "You have 15 minutes. Do you know how much time the Brazilian experts had? 2 hours each. But you, since you are so young, you have 15 minutes. Number two," he continues with a malicious smile, "you can't use any professional equipment from the exhibition. No electronic scanners, no hydraulic lifts, no diagnostic computers. Just your little hands and whatever you have in that ordinary backpack you're carrying." The crowd begins to murmur. Some feel that this is too cruel, but most are hooked on the drama, waiting for the inevitable failure. "And number three," says Leandro, moving closer to her, his coffee-scented breath hitting Alessandra's face. "When you fail, and you will take this sign." He pulls a cardboard sign out of his jacket on which someone has already written in black marker, "Women don't know anything about heavy mechanics." And you will stand here in front of everyone holding the sign while everyone present takes pictures of you for their social media so that you learn that there are things that are not for little girls who play at being mechanics. The silence that falls is heavy, uncomfortable. Even some of the Brazilians look at each other with an expression that says, "Isn't this too much?" But no one says anything. No one defends her. In the VIP area, Armando Delgado watches the scene while answering emails on his phone. For him, it's just more circus, more wasted time. He has seen so many experts fail that he no longer expects anything. He is thinking about how much money he loses every day that his truck is out of commission, mentally calculating the losses. 3 lost contracts equal 4.7 million pesos. That number hurts him more than anything that is happening down there with that girl. But something makes Armando look up for a second. Maybe it's the expression on Alessandra's face. That mixture of absolute fear and unbreakable dignity vaguely reminds him of something, someone, but he can't quite put his finger on it. Adesandra looks at the humiliating sign, then at Leandro, then at the 10 Brazilian mechanics waiting for her to give up, then at the cell phone cameras pointing at her from all angles. The image of her little brothers at home pops into her mind. 9-year-old Tonito, who yesterday asked her when they would have money to buy chicken because he was tired of eating only beans. Her 13-year-old sister Lupita, who needs new shoes because hers are already worn out, but doesn't complain because she knows there is no money. Her 15-year-old brother Fernando, who had to quit soccer at school because they couldn't afford the registration fee. She thinks of her father Renato, the man who was once her hero and is now broken in an old armchair, defeated by a system that spat him out like trash. She thinks of her mother Ophelia, her hands cracked from cleaning other people's floors. That woman who never complains, who always smiles, even though her whole body hurts and she thinks of herself. That 16-year-old girl who burned her hands learning to weld because there was no other way to spend her nights, translating technical manuals, word by word, with an old cell phone, crying with frustration when something didn't work and she had to try again. In the 6 years she spent keeping those two impossible trucks alive against all odds. I accept, says Alessandra in a voice that does not tremble. Firm, clear. I accept your conditions. A murmur runs through the crowd. Leandro smiles with the satisfaction of a predator who has just caught his prey. Perfect. How brave the girl is, he shouts into the microphone with horrible sarcasm. Stopwatch, gentlemen, 15 minutes on the clock. One of the Brazilian mechanics, the cruelest of them all, approaches the microphone. I want to make a public bet, he says in his heavily accented Spanish. I bet 5,000 pesos that this girl won't last 5 minutes before she starts crying. The other Brazilians laugh and several raise their hands offering their own bets. The live broadcasts explode. A Portuguese channel headlines, Brazilians humiliate Mexican girl at auto show. The comments are savage. She's going to cry like a baby. What a shame for such mistreatment, because Nai defends her. But different comments also begin to appear, giving her a chance. Don't be assholes. If the girl accepts the challenge, it's because she knows something. Hopefully she'll shut everyone up. I'm rooting for the girl. Alessandra takes off her backpack and places it carefully on the floor. Her hands tremble slightly as she takes out her tools. Basic wrenches, a small flashlight, a screwdriver, pliers, and a small bottle of industrial sealant that she always carries with her. They are humble tools, some rusty, some repaired with tape. Nothing compared to the professional equipment worth $800,000 pesos that the Brazilians used. Time starts now, Leandro shouts, pressing the stopwatch on his cell phone. Alexandra walks toward the imposing black Ford F-450. That $3.2 million peso beast makes her feel so small. But she has worked with old trucks for 6 years. She has stuck her hands into engines that spit oil, into transmissions that creak, into suspensions that hang by a thread. She has learned to listen to what vehicles tell her through their symptoms. The 10 Brazilians stand in a row with their arms crossed, smiles of superiority on their faces. Leandra paces back and forth like the ringmaster of a cruel circus. The crowd is completely silent now. Everyone is recording. Everyone is waiting for disaster. Armando Delgado finally puts his phone away. Something about that girl's posture caught his attention. There is determination there, dignity, something he hasn't seen in a long time in the people around him. He leans forward in his seat, watching. Then Sandra does something that completely baffles everyone. She doesn't go straight to the engine or the electrical system like the Brazilians did. Instead, she crouches down and examines the rear suspension with her eyes, without touching anything yet. Then she stands up and says in a clear voice, I need you to load the box with weight. Leandro lets out another laugh. Hey, listen to this. She wants us to load the box as if we hadn't already done it 10 times. But she signals to 2 workers, put in some bags of cement, let her play. While they load 50 kiloton bags of cement, Alessandra watches with intense focus. She is counting mentally, observing how the suspension responds, how the system behaves under progressive pressure. She takes out her notebook and quickly jots something down. 10 minutes, Leandro shouts. It's been 10 minutes and you haven't even touched anything. The live comments are savage. She's going to give up. She's wasting time. She doesn't even know where to start. Poor girl. But then Alessandra says something that makes the 10 Brazilian mechanics look at each other with confused expressions. I need access to the active suspension hydraulic fluid tank compartment, not the engine, the reservoir. One of the older Brazilians frowns. The reservoir. That system is sealed. It doesn't need maintenance. Please, Alessandra insists. It's there. Leandro looks at his watch. 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes left, girl. His voice drips with anticipated satisfaction at seeing her fail. With hands that no longer tremble, Alessandra uses her cell phone flashlight and screwdriver to access the compartment behind the rear cabin. It is a small, hard-to-reach space that requires her to crouch uncomfortably. She practically disappears under the chassis. The crowd is completely silent. The only sound is the ticking of the timer on Leandro's cell phone, amplified by the speakers. Inside that dark, cramped space, Alessandra examines the hydraulic fluid reservoir with her flashlight. And then, after 6 years of experience diagnosing impossible faults, after having developed that special instinct that only comes from pure necessity, she sees it. An almost invisible microfracture, a tiny line in the reservoir's well that no electronic scanner would detect because it is too small, but which allows microscopic fluid leakage under high pressure. Alessandra's heart beats fast. She found it. She really found it. 2 minutes, Leandro shouts with mischievous joy. Prepare the plaque of shame. Alessandra emerges from under the chassis, her face smeared with grease, but her eyes shining with something that makes several in the crowd hold their breath. She knows something that no one else knows, and in less than 2 minutes, it will change everything. 1 minute 30, Leandro shouts, and you can hear in his voice the cruel anticipation of someone who is about to see his prophecy of humiliation fulfilled. The 10 Brazilian mechanics are already smiling, one of them literally holding up the sign of shame, ready to hand it to her. But Alessandra is not nervous. In fact, there is something about her posture that is completely changed. She stands up straight, wipes her grease-stained hands on her pants, and with a clear, firm voice that cuts through the air like a knife, she says, I already know what you have. The silence that falls is so absolute that you can hear the hum of the lights in the pavilion. Leandro stops walking. The Brazilian stops smiling. In the VIP area, Armando Delgado leans forward completely, his eyes fixed on that girl for the first time with total attention. This forged system starts Alessandra, and her voice now has a technical confidence that makes several engineers in the crowd look at each other in surprise. It uses high-pressure synthetic hydraulic fluid at 3,500 psi to control the adaptive active suspension. It's not a pneumatic system as you assumed. He looks directly at the Brazilians. It's hydraulic with electronic backup. One of the older Brazilian mechanics, the one with the gray beard, feels a chill run down his spine. He assumed it was pneumatic. They all assume that. The problem continues. Alessandra walks around the truck while explaining like a professor giving a master class. It's not in the electronic control system. It's not in the sensors. It's not in the compressors. You all looked in the wrong places because you trusted that the sealed, maintenance-free system really was that. 1 minute, Leandro shouts, but his voice no longer sounds so confident. There's a micro crack, says Alessandra, crouching down and pointing to the reservoir compartment. Here, in the internal weld of the hydraulic fluid tank. It's invisible to the naked eye. No electronic scanner would detect it because it's too small. But under heavy load, when the system demands maximum pressure to keep the suspension level, the fluid escapes microscopically through that fissure. She stands up and looks at everyone present. The fluid Layla sensor does not detect the loss because it is very gradual, very slow. But when they load more than 10,000 kilojoules into the box, the pressure demand exposes the fault. The system loses hydraulic pressure, cannot maintain the suspension, and goes into protection mode, collapsing it to prevent further damage to the system. The silence is different now. It is no longer anticipation of failure. It is absolute shock, amazement. Several engineers in the crowd nod slowly, processing that what she has just explained makes perfect technical sense. The gray-bearded Brazilian puts his hands to his head. Meu Deus, he murmurs in Portuguese. Nós nem olhamos o reservatório. Nos focamos só na eletrônica. 30 seconds, Leandro shouts, but now his voice trembles. Alessandra pulls that little bottle of emergency industrial sealant out of her backpack. That substance she learned to use, keeping her father's impossible trucks running with minimal resources. I'm going to make a temporary but effective repair, she says as she crawls back under the chassis, in a professional workshop. Later, they will have to replace the entire tank, but this will seal the microfracture and stop the leak. Her hands move with astonishing precision in that dark, cramped space. She applies the sealant exactly where it needs to go, with the confidence of someone who has made emergency repairs 1,000 times. Then he comes out, walks over to an exhibiting company's booth, and with all the politeness in the world asks, "Could you lend me some LHM Plus synthetic hydraulic fluid? I need about half a liter." The company representative, completely mesmerized by what he is witnessing, almost runs to get him the fluid. Alessandra returns to the Ford F450, locates the suspension hydraulic system's fill valve, and with precise movements refills the fluid. Then she does something critical that shows her true expertise. She bleeds the air from the system by opening and closing valves in a specific sequence that only someone who really understands hydraulic systems would know how to do. "Time," Leandro shouts, but his voice no longer sounds triumphant. "The 15 minutes are up." Alessandra stands up, wipes her hands, and says with absolute calm, "1 minute? I had 1 minute to spare." She turns to Leandro with unwavering dignity. "Now please load the box with the maximum weight, 1,800 kg, and test the suspension." Who else wants to see Leandro's face when the truck works? Comment below. The crowd explodes in murmurs. The live broadcasts are completely crazy. The comments are running so fast that it's impossible to read them. "It can't be. He figured it out. I want to see the test. If this works, I'm going to cry." Leandro Vega is completely white. His face looks like paper. The 10 Brazilian mechanics are paralyzed, looking at each other with expressions of growing horror as they process that such a simple solution, but one that required lateral thinking that they didn't have, went completely unnoticed by them. Armando Delgado is standing now. He came down from the VIP area and made his way through the crowd to the front row. His eyes are fixed on Alessandra. There is something in his chest that he hasn't felt in years. Amazement, respect, and growing shame at how he allowed this girl to be treated. 4 workers begin loading the Ford F450's bed with bags of cement. 50 kilo, 100, 300, 600, 1,000 kilos. The suspension compresses slightly, but holds. 100 kilos. It remains perfectly level. 1,800 kilos. Maximum load. Alexander gives the order in a firm voice. "Start the engine. Activate the adaptive suspension system. Move it." The assigned driver. With trembling hands, he starts the Black Beast. The B8 turbo diesel engine roars with that deep sound that makes your chest vibrate. He activates the suspension system. The indicators on the dashboard light up green. The driver puts the truck in first gear and moves it slowly. Then, a little faster, he makes a turn, brakes, accelerates. The rear suspension remains perfectly stable, perfectly level, without collapsing, working as it should have from the beginning. For 3 seconds, there is absolute silence. 3 eternal seconds where everyone processes what they have just witnessed, and then the pavilion explodes. The roar of approval from more than 600 people is deafening. Screams, applause, whistles, people jumping. Live broadcasts literally crash due to the number of comments. "She did it, damn it. I'm crying. Shut everyone up. Justice. That's my Mexico." The comments in Portuguese are equally explosive. "Meu Deus do céu, a menina resolveu. Que humilha para os brasileiros. Vergonha." Several of the influencers are literally screaming on their broadcasts. "I can't believe it. A 22-year-old girl with tools in a backpack just solved in 14 minutes what 10 international experts couldn't solve in 3 days." Leandro Vega is paralyzed, completely white, with his mouth open but unable to utter a word. The cardboard sign of humiliation falls from his hands to the floor. His world has just collapsed in front of 600 witnesses and thousands of people watching live. The 10 Brazilian mechanics are devastated. The one with the gray beard has tears in his eyes. not of joy, but of utter humiliation. Another is sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. A third murmurs over and over, we failed, oh reservoir. We blindly trusted the electronics, the cruelest of all, the one who made bets on when Alessandra would cry. He approaches her walking like a zombie, and with a completely broken voice says in his accented Spanish, Miss, I have no words. I was terrible to you, horrible. Please, tears running down her face. Forgive me. Forgive us. We are not. I am an arrogant idiot who judged by appearances. Another Brazilian literally kneels in front of Alessandra. Bose humiliated us, he says in Portuguese, and then switches to broken Spanish. But he humiliated us without arrogance, only with pure talent. I deserve this shame. I learned today that experience without humility is useless. Alessandra looks at them all, these broken adult men in front of her, and feels a complex mix of emotions. There is no triumphalism in her, no revenge, only emotional exhaustion and relief at having proven that she wasn't crazy, that she really could do this. I also made many assumptions, she says softly. I also made mistakes. The difference is that I had no choice but to learn from them because I didn't have the money to make mistakes twice. And then Armando Delgado walks toward her. That 47-year-old man, a millionaire tycoon, owner of the third largest construction group in Mexico, makes his way through the crowd, and everyone instantly falls silent when they recognize him. Armando arrives in front of Alessandra. He looks her in the eyes, and to the absolute shock of everyone present, of all the cameras broadcasting live, of the 600 witnesses who will never forget this moment, Armando Delgado kneels down. He kneels on the floor of the pavilion in front of that girl from Puebla with grease-stained face and simple clothes. How, Armando asks, his voice hoarse with emotion. How is it that a 22-year-old girl with tools in a backpack solved in 14 minutes what 10 international specialists couldn't solve in 3 days? How does Alessandra feel the tears she has been holding back throughout the humiliation finally break through the barriers? They begin to fall down her cheeks, mixing with the grease and sweat, and with a breaking voice she begins to tell her story. Sir, she says 3 times, unable to hold back any longer, I learned out of necessity. When I was 16, my dad lost his job. We were left with nothing. He bought 2 old trucks with his last savings to start a transportation business. But the trucks were always breaking down, and we didn't have money for professional mechanics. She wipes her tears with the back of her hand, leaving grease stains on her cheeks. I saw my dad cry because he couldn't pay for a repair. I saw my mom work cleaning houses with her hands bleeding from scrubbing floors. I saw my brothers go hungry some nights because there wasn't enough food for everyone. The crowd is completely silent. Many have tears in their eyes. Live streams are exploding with comments from people crying in front of their screens. So I decided, Alessandra continued in a trembling voice, that I was going to learn how to repair those trucks without money for courses. No teachers, just me, free internet in a public square, and YouTube videos. For 6 years, I kept those impossible trucks running. I burned myself, I hit myself, I cried out of frustration 1,000 times. But I learned by putting them together. She listens with an expression that shifts from amazement to deep shame to something more complex, a painful recognition that she was about to lose this because of her prejudices. I specialized in hydraulic systems, says Alessandra, because they were the ones that failed the most and were the most expensive to repair. I learned to diagnose just by looking at behavior patterns. I developed instinct because I didn't have expensive equipment. And today I came with my last savings from a year, dreaming only of making some contacts, maybe getting a job that would pay a little more than the 95 pesos a month I earn. Alessandra's tears fall harder now, but they humiliated me for being young, for being a woman, for being poor. They treated me as if I were worthless. Armando Delgado feels something breaking inside him. That armor he built around himself after his wife's death, that coldness he adopted to protect himself from pain, is shattered by this girl's vulnerability and absolute talent. Alessandra Ruiz, says Armando, in a voice that everyone can hear loud and clear. I apologize. I'm sorry for my skepticism. I'm sorry for allowing you to be humiliated. I'm sorry for almost missing the opportunity to meet someone truly extraordinary because of my stupid prejudices. He turns to Leandro Vega, and his voice turns to ice. You're fired. Pack your things. I never want to see you in my company again. Your cruelty, your arrogance, your incompetence, all of that ends today. Leandro opens his mouth to protest, but Armando raises a hand, one more word, and I'll make sure no one in this industry ever hires you again. Then Armando looks at Alessandra again, still kneeling in front of her. You taught me something today that I had forgotten. That real talent doesn't need expensive diplomas. That true ability comes from necessity, from courage, from intelligence applied with humility. He slowly stands up and with firm gestures takes a check out of his inside jacket pocket, fills it out right there in front of everyone for $600,000. He hands it to Alessandra, but before she can process it, Armando continues, this is just the promised prize, but I want to offer you something more, if you'll allow me. The crowd is completely mesmerized. No one moves, no one breathes. I want to offer you a contract as maintenance manager for my entire fleet. 87 heavy vehicles, a salary of 48,000 pesos a month, an apartment in Puebla for you and your whole family, full health insurance for everyone, and a scholarship for you to study mechanical engineering at UNAM while working part-time. Alessandra can't process what she's hearing. Her mind refuses to believe that this is real. The check trembles in her hands. Do you accept? Armando asks in a soft voice. Alessandra can only nod, tears now falling uncontrollably, tears of relief, of emotional exhaustion, of absolute gratitude. The pavilion explodes again in deafening applause. People shout, cry, celebrate. Live broadcasts are being shared thousands of times per second. And in that moment, Alessandra Ruiz, the mechanic from Puebla, becomes a national symbol that talent, dignity, and courage always find their way into the light. The next 3 hours in the Expo Pavilion are a whirlwind of emotions that Alexandra never imagined she would experience. The media rushes toward her. Televisa, TV Azteca, Milenio, El Universal. They all want to interview her. Camera flashes blind her as journalists shout questions from all angles. Alessandra, how do you feel right now? Is it true that you taught yourself mechanics completely on your own? What would you say to young women who want to enter male-dominated professions? Armando Delgado stands by her side like a protective shield, his hand on her shoulder in a paternal gesture that he himself did not expect to feel. 3 hours ago, this girl was invisible to him. Now he feels a deep need to protect her, to make sure the world treats her with the respect she deserves. Meanwhile, in a secluded corner of the pavilion, the 10 Brazilian mechanics are gathered, processing what has just happened. The one with the gray beard, whose name is Roberto Mendez, and who has 52 years of experience, wipes away the tears that keep falling. 52 years, he murmurs in Portuguese. 52 years working with trucks, and a 22-year-old girl taught me the greatest lesson in silence, all sharing that deep shame mixed with genuine respect. The youngest of the group, Paulo 38, is the one who finally articulates what everyone is feeling. We were arrogant, we trusted in technology, our diplomas, our years of experience. We forgot the basics. She didn't forget because she couldn't forget. One by one, the Brazilians approach Alessandra between interviews to apologize again. Now calmer, more sincere, Roberto Mendez takes Alessandra's hands in his, those huge, calloused hands from decades of work, holding her small but equally calloused hands. Miss Alessandra, he says in Spanish, broken but full of emotion. I have 3 daughters in Brazil. 2 are engineers, 1 is a doctor. I always told them they could do anything they wanted, but look, today I realized that I didn't completely believe my own words, because when I saw you, I assumed you couldn't do it, and I was completely wrong, mistaken. His tears fall again. I'm going to tell this story to my daughters. I'm going to tell them your story so they know that true talent has no gender, no age, no social class. It only has determination and courage. Alessandra embraces this man who 2 hours ago publicly humiliated her and now cries in her arms. It is a moment of human redemption so profound that several journalists capture the image, and that photograph will become iconic in the coming weeks. Armando watches all this from a few meters away, and something inside him that had been dead since he lost Estella begins to awaken. He recognizes in Alessandra something his wife always told him. Armando, true success is not measured in millions. It is measured in how many lives you touch with kindness. For 3 years after Estella's death, Armando became a soulless money-making machine. He surrounded himself with people like Leandro, incompetent but servile, who only told him what he wanted to hear. He distanced himself from his children because they reminded him too much of what he had lost. He built emotional walls so high that nothing and no one could reach him. But this young woman from Puebla, with her extraordinary talent born of pure necessity, with her dignity preserved despite humiliation, with her total absence of bitterness despite all she has suffered, has just torn down those walls in one afternoon. Armando takes out his phone and does something he hasn't done in 2 years. He calls his eldest son, Armando Jr., who lives in Houston, working as a corporate lawyer. "Dad?" His son's voice sounds surprised, almost alarmed. "Is everything okay? Did something happen?" "Yes, son," Armando says, his voice thick with emotion. "Something happened, something important. I need to tell you about an extraordinary young woman who taught me today that I had lost sight of what really matters in life." For 20 minutes, Armando tells his son the whole story. He tells him about his cynicism, about how he let Alessandra be humiliated, about how she demonstrated a talent born of pure necessity, about the brutal lesson in humility that everyone received today. "Dad," says Armando Jr., his voice breaking with emotion, "it's been 3 years since I've heard you speak like this, with passion, with humanity. Since Mom died, you became someone I no longer recognized." "I know, son," Armando admits with tears in his eyes, "and I'm sorry I lost my way, but today, thanks to Alessandra, I found it again. And I want you to come to Mexico soon. I want you to meet her. I want to be your father again, not just a name in your phone." That conversation is the first of many changes that Alessandra will initiate in Armando's life without even knowing it. In another corner of the ward, Alessandra finally has a moment to call home in Puebla. Her mother, Ophelia, answers on the second ring. "My daughter, how did the exhibition go?" Alessandra can't speak. The sobs explode from her chest with such force that her mother immediately panics. "Alessandra, what happened? Are you okay, daughter? Talk to me." Mom manages to say between sobs, "Mom, something incredible happened. Something that's going to change everything forever." She tells her everything. The initial humiliation, the 15-minute trial, the solution to the problem, the $600,000 check, the contract, the apartment, the salary, the college scholarship. Ophelia listens in absolute silence, and when Alessandra finishes, they are both crying on the phone. "My girl," Ophelia says, her voice completely broken. "My beautiful girl. I always knew your efforts would pay off. I always knew it. Your dad, oh, my daughter, your dad is going to cry when he finds out." "Where is he, Mom?" "On the couch, as usual. But Alessandra, this is going to lift him up. This is going to give him hope again. Because his daughter, his princess, has just proven that we Ruiz are not finished, that we are still worth something." When Alessandra finally hangs up, Armando is waiting for her with a gentle expression that completely transforms his normally hard face. "Alessandra," he says, "I know today was intense, but there's something else I want to do, if you'll let me. I want to meet your family, your father, your mother, your siblings. I want to look them in the eyes and apologize for almost denying them this opportunity because of my blindness." Alessandra looks at him in amazement. "You want to come to my house?" "Not just go," says Armando firmly. "I want to take you all out to dinner tonight at the best restaurant in Puebla. Because today you didn't just win a job, Alessandra. Today you won an extended family, if you'll let me." And as the sun sets over Mexico City, as social media explodes with the story of the mechanic from Puebla, who humbly outshone 10 Brazilian experts, as millions of people share videos and photos and words of inspiration, a profound transformation is taking place in the hearts of everyone involved, because today they all learn that true talent doesn't need validation. It just needs an opportunity to shine. A year later, on a sunny March morning, Alessandra Ruiz arrives at the Delgado Construcciones headquarters in her own white Ford Ranger pickup truck, a gift from Armando for her first anniversary with the company. She is now 23 years old, and the title on her office door reads, Maintenance and Technical Development Manager. What Alessandra achieved in 12 months exceeded expectations, reducing fleet maintenance costs by 42% by implementing her techniques of necessity, mechanics, solving complex problems with limited resources before spending on expensive spare parts. Vehicle downtime dropped by 67%, which translated into 8.33 million pesos saved for the company. But most importantly, she created a training program where she teaches other mechanics to think laterally, not to rely blindly on technology, and to develop diagnostic instincts. Her office has a panoramic view of Mexico City. In one corner is a small desk where her brother Tonito, now 10, does his homework after school while playing with toy tools. The boy dreams of becoming a mechanical engineer like his older sister. On Alessandra's desk is a family photo that makes her smile every time she sees it. Her father, Genaro, now 52, is wearing a company shirt and smiling broadly. After Armando offered him a job as a technical consultant, Genaro overcame the depression that had paralyzed him for 6 years. Now he works alongside his daughter, teaching new employees about transportation logistics, and has regained the dignity he thought he had lost forever. His mother, Ophelia, stopped cleaning other people's houses. She is now studying business administration at a private university on a scholarship from the Alessandra Ruiz Foundation, which Armando created in honor of the young mechanic. His siblings, Fernando and Lupita, are in private schools and excelling academically. The entire family lives in a spacious 3-bedroom apartment in a nice area of Puebla, with all utilities paid for by the company. On weekends, Armando often travels from Mexico City to have dinner with them, because he found in the Ruiz family something he lost when his wife died: the warmth of a genuine family. Armando's children, Armando Jr. and his sister Patricia, came from the United States 6 months ago to meet Alessandra. The dinner was emotional, with Armando crying as he told them, "This young woman saved not only my company, she saved my humanity. She gave me back to you." Now the Delgado siblings call their father frequently. They plan to move back to Mexico, and the family relationship that was destroyed, it is being rebuilt brick by brick. Of the 10 Brazilian mechanics, 4 traveled to Mexico to personally apologize 3 months after the incident. Roberto Mendez brought his 3 daughters to meet Alessandra, and the scene of those 4 professional women hugging the mechanic from Puebla was captured by the national media. 2 of the Brazilians now work as special consultants hired by Alessandra in a relationship of mutual respect and continuous learning. Leandro Vega never returned to work in the automotive industry. Videos of his cruelty went viral with more than 15 million views, and his name became permanently associated with arrogance and abuse. It is a just brutal lesson. The Alessandra Ruiz Foundation has awarded scholarships and free tools to 347 young people from low-income families in 6 states in Mexico. The Mechanics of Necessity program has been implemented in 4 technical universities and is changing the way automotive diagnostics are taught in the country. This morning, Alessandra has an interview with CNN in Espanol. While waiting in the boardroom, she reviews her notes. She was asked what advice she would give to young people facing difficult situations. When the cameras turn on, Alessandra looks directly into the lens and says in a firm voice, "I was humiliated for being young, female, and poor. They treated me as if I were worthless, but I learned something fundamental. Your difficult situation is not a curse, it is your training. Every obstacle you face is preparing you for something greater. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, because true talent is born of necessity and the courage to never give up." Her words are shared millions of times on social media. They become an anthem for a generation of young Mexicans struggling against poverty, prejudice, and despair. That night, Alessandra returns to her apartment, where her whole family is waiting for her with dinner ready. As they eat together, laughing and sharing stories of their day, she looks around the table and feels deep gratitude, because a year ago she was an invisible girl with tools in a backpack and an impossible dream. Today, she is a national symbol that talent, dignity, and perseverance always find their way into the light. And somewhere in Puebla, a 12-year-old girl who has just seen Alexandra's interview on CNN tells her mother, "Mom, I want to be a mechanic too. If Alexandra could do it, so can I." And so the circle of inspiration continues unstoppably, transforming lives one at a time.